yoga is a way of living where you are in direct contact with the immensity in everyday life. There's a technology of perception and experience that is a kind of wisdom, an understanding of your form, what you are as a human being, and what tools you have. In almost all of your cases, you're using almost none of your tools. I'm trying to show you how to use those tools and live. Your life externally won't change all that much. On the face of it, there is a quality of everyday life that never goes away. I oftentimes sense there's a kind of fear that that goes away. It doesn't go away, but something else comes in. And that's this kind of internal telescope. There's a breadth that comes into your life in the experience of the texture of your life. The way this path unfolds is like a steady growing of illumination. To study here at Hard Light and to study this kind of path, referred to often as the Siddha path, has at its base the awakening of the Kundalini, which is the impossible and unreasonable principle of transformation, evolution, and illumination that lies within all human beings. It lies within other forms of beings as well. But in all your cases, you're human beings, so that's what we're talking about. Once this force is awakened, it begins this process of illumination from within. Now, what does it come into contact with? It comes into contact with the sensibilities, the qualities of being as they are intrinsic to being human. You have tools, you have mechanisms, apparatus of perception, that are capable of radical change. You can go from being asleep to awake. The process is known as sadhana, and the basic path of access of accommodation of this process is meditation. Human being is a very complex form. It is, when you're looking at the graph of kinds of beings that make up this universe, which are quite infinite. What is notable about the human form is it is said to be a final form, in as much as it is a form that is evolved externally enough to generate direct awareness of, or perception of, incredibly refined levels of reality. Not every sentient being, not every conscious being is capable of doing this. I mean, simply on the evolutionary chain of this world, we're the first form of mammal that is capable of abstract thought. It's an octave of thought that means you can think without resorting to symbols. The brain is complex enough to produce this form of consciousness that doesn't just happen. We can think in the abstract. We can consider the incomprehensible. We're not nailed to appearances. We can think of something that's inconceivable. It's a double-edged sword, but it's important. Further, the evolution of the human form carries within it subtle forms of perception, making it capable of, by virtue of the mechanism intrinsic in the structure. It's not something outside or beyond yourself. Well, we talked about at great length at the retreat and have discussed for some time what we call the soul, the Atman, in the human form is intrinsic to the human form. The substance of the Atman, the substance of the soul, is of the vibratory frequency of the self. That octave is present within us consciously. It could even be said to exist as a subtle organ, almost, of consciousness. Very subtle, though. But that vibratory principle of the self, which is the incomprehensible fabric of creation, that on a scientific level can be broken out into incredibly refined shavings of perception, of qualities. When we speak of the incomprehensible, we just say the self, and that's the immensity. It's the beyond qualities. Yet, by virtue of the soul and the vibratory principle of the soul, we have access to the vibratory truth of the self. That's how we know it exists. Our soul tells us it's there. That's abstract thought. Nothing you think when I say that has anything to do with the truth of it, yet you can sense the truth of it. Now there's a kind of a science to moving consciousness down these corridors. This is what yoga amounts to. Yoga is the evolution of consciousness in direct relationship to the form consciousness occupies, in our case, human beings, the human